Hello and welcome to Elke Art. My name is Mrs. Elke, and today's project I am dreaming about the desert. So I actually grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I love all things about the desert. I love the nice dry heat, and I love all of the beautiful plants and animals that live there. Today we'll be celebrating the saguaro cactus. It's one of my favorites. Of course, they're the tall, skinny ones that have those arms kind of poking out on either side. And I thought it would be fun to do a project using a saguaro cactus. So here we have the cactus art. Notice that we also have all kinds of fun patterns that we incorporated, some line designs, and then this nice warm color scheme going on with the cool cactus in front. So follow along and see if you can make a nice cactus inspired piece of art. For this project, I'm using watercolor paper, Sharpie, and some watercolor paint. And I want to start off a little bit off-centered, so a little bit to one side. And I'm going to make a line that's basically the length of the cactus. So how tall do I want my cactus to be? And notice it's pretty tall because I want it to take up a good portion of my paper. I'm going to add another line that's kind of like a hill underneath where my cactus is going. And then I'll throw a couple more lines that are similar to that kind of follow the same path underneath. So there's a couple there under my hill. Now I want to make this look like a cactus instead of a line. So I'm going to add another line on each side. Notice that the top is curved a little bit like the top of a saguaro. And I think I got to decide exactly how wide I want it to be. So I think I want to add a little bit more on this side here and a little bit more on the other side. So I've got it a little bit wider. And then I'll do the same thing for the arms of the cactus. So it'll have some little things growing. But before that, I wanted to add a little bit more ground. So I'm going to add a little bit more hill here and on the either side. You can make it a little bit more mountain-like. You can make it smoother, more hill-like. It's really up to you. But I'm adding those same curved lines underneath as well so that it's kind of like a striped hill or striped mountains. All right, next, now I'm going to add the arms to the cactus, and I'm going to start right on the side of the cactus and then curve out and up. So you can see right now it just looks like a stick, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but maybe make it a little higher or lower than my other one. And then I'll make these a little bit wider too by starting on the top and then following that line down on either side. So this is kind of a nice way to make them a little bit wider. And you can decide, maybe you made your arms too far out to the side, so then you can add those extra stripes on the inside. Or maybe you made them a little too close to your cactus, so you could add those extra stripes on the outside. So this is really kind of a nice way to correct anything that you might want to change. So I might just add some on the inside because I went a little wide right away, and then that makes my cactus work. All right, I also want to add a sun, and if you have a circle that you could trace, like a quarter maybe, that would work. I'm just going to freehand draw my circle for my sun, and then I want this feeling that the sun is just shining. It's like vibrating the heat, right? It is the desert. So I'm going to start going around my sun with more circles that are radiating out. So I can just keep on drawing them. And as I run into the cactus or as I run into the outside of the paper, I can just kind of pick up my Sharpie and then continue on after that. So I want to do these radiating circles all the way, filling up the rest of my paper. So I have all the way down to basically where the mountain or the ground starts. I want these radiating lines. And they're not perfect. You can see my circles are far from perfect, but you get the idea. All right, that is the main drawing for this. Now I want to go in and add some patterns, some line designs. And I thought it might work better actually to use a thin Sharpie for this part. So I switched to a thinner Sharpie because it has a smaller point. And now I am going in and adding some patterns and some details to each of these sections of my picture. And I'd like to try to use a variety. So I'm thinking of some different line patterns and some different shape patterns. Some line patterns being vertical lines, wavy lines, zigzag lines, cloud lines, things like that. And then shape patterns would be things like polka dots, or circles, or squares, or triangles, or things like that. So you can kind of decide which patterns you would like to use, and you can see I've started with the sky, making patterns with all of those radiating circles, and then I will go ahead and do the same thing for the ground and for the cactus. And I'm trying to use different patterns in each section. But if you need to repeat, maybe you could combine like a line pattern and a shape pattern, or two different line patterns. So sometimes that can help if you're kind of coming up with, or having a hard time coming up with different ideas. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in each section of my cactus with different patterns that I can think of. And you can find different patterns like on Google. If you do a pattern search sometimes, or if you type in Zentangles, you can get lots of fun ideas for patterns that way too. But as you can see, I'm going to just continue filling up my cactus with patterns now, and they can be all kinds of different line designs and shape designs. And then I'll do the same thing down below with my ground. So every section of my ground is going to have different patterns. Here I've got some spirals I'm adding. I used a wavy line. I am doing some ones that look like paper clips. Do zigzag lines with dots that go all the way across. So whatever you can think of, polka dots, circles. Got some swirls that go all the way across, loop-de-loops, and up and down and side to side lines as a pattern as well. All right, pattern is done. Now it's time to paint. So for the painting, I am going to start in the sky with some warm colors. And I want to make sure that I have my lightest lights in the middle. I think I'm going to try to keep my sun white, so I have light yellow, and then it's going to kind of change into more oranges. So I'm going to add a little bit more orange next to it. And I'm actually okay if my colors blend a little bit. My yellow is still wet. I still have some orange next to it. So if they kind of bleed into each other a little bit, that's okay, because then it kind of helps make that kind of sunset vibe. And then I'll do the same thing kind of with red, right? I'll bring my red or pink right up next to my orange, and if they mix a little bit, that's totally fine. I'm trying to be careful to go around my cactus to make sure that that doesn't mix in with my orange or my pink, because that wouldn't look good. And then I'm going to go all the way down to my ground. I can add a little bit of purple here at the very end, or at the very bottom with my pink. Then I'm going to do my ground, and I want that to be kind of like a reddish brown or a yellow brown or an orangish brown, something mixed with brown, just to give it kind of that vibe. I'm adding a little bit of yellow here. It's kind of a golden yellow, but you could do yellow mixed with brown for the bottom there too, just to give it some interest. And I'm not even really worrying too much about the lines, just kind of filling in the area. At the very end, I'm going to go ahead and paint my cactus green, You do want to make sure that your other paint is somewhat dry, hopefully, so that you don't get a lot of bleeding happening. And I'm going to fill that in with a lighter green, and then I can decide maybe to add a little bit of shading on the part that's away from the sun if I want. So maybe add a little bit more blue-green in there. It really doesn't matter. Up to you as to what you do for your design. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed painting a cactus with some fun patterns going on as well, and hopefully it gave you some desert vibes. Thanks so much for watching Elke Art, and join me again on my channel where I have all kinds of fun art tutorials. See you next time.